Hello and welcome to my second tutorial on using the FMC API Python library. And in this library, or excuse me, in this tutorial, we're going to cover the typical use case of most class objects within the FMC API library. The ones that are very specific to this, not to say that other class objects won't have a piece of what we're talking about, but the ones that will work almost exclusively in the methodology that you're going to see here are the IP host, IP network, IP range, URL, protocol port, and security zone objects. Now that's as of this recording. We're constantly adding new ones. I hope someday, as soon as it's available, to have NAT policy objects, which would be really nice as well. And they may or may not fit in this tutorial's style because I don't know what that API is going to look like. But anyway, the other thing different from the previous tutorial that we did is I'm using the from syntax, so from FMC API import star instead of the import FMC API because I don't want to type out or even say FMC API any more than I necessarily need to. Excuse me. The next thing is to set up our host username and password. Now I could have put these all in here. I just like to have them separate. And of course auto deploy equals false because I'm not really making any changes to any device. I'm just modifying or messing around with objects inside the FMC. In later tutorials we'll probably go so far as to actually push changes to an FTD device or a managed device of the FMC. We talked about this before with the with syntax to be able to instantiate the FMC instance. And in this case, I'm calling it FMC. This could easily, you can see how this is highlighted and it highlights down here. It's all lowercase. I could have easily changed this and called it something else like FMC1. And the reason you may want to do that is that syntax, whenever you instantiate one of these classes, FMC equals FMC kind of looks a little weird to some people, but one is the variable inside the object, and then the other is the value or variable that's outside of the object that's getting assigned to the variable on the inside of the object. It just so happens that they're both named FMC in my particular case. So what are we doing here? We are creating an instance variable. It's just a variable inside Python. I called it inst1. You can call it whatever you want, and then it equals, and then you assign it to the class object that you're working with. So instance1 equals IP host, and then the minimum requirement necessary to be able to validly use one of these instance objects is you have to assign it to an FMC instance. So you will always see this style of syntax. I have the with statement instantiating the FMC instance, and then as I use those particular class objects, I will pass that instance the FMC instance object into those particular objects. Now the reason I do it that way is you could technically have, let's say, two connections, one to one FMC, one to another FMC, and maybe instance one, its instance object or its FMC object is this one, but then maybe later on I want to assign that, maybe I make some changes or maybe I'm converting from one FMC to another one. I could easily just change what FMC instance it's associated to, and all the variables and values that are assigned to inst1 can now be manipulated against the second FMC. Little advanced topic right there for those of you who might want to play with that, but that's kind of that's the reason I did it the way I did it. Okay, so the minimum requirement, we've got the FMC variable being passed an FMC instance value. Now let's add some values. So I know for IP host, in fact I wonder if I can show that. So let's do inst1 dot, and then some of the objects that you have in here, there's name. I was wondering if it would give me and there's value, and you can see that they're labeled by the IP host class that they're associated to. Where's name? IP host. So I don't know how to filter this so I don't get the API class template ones, but you have the you have the IP host specific instance objects or variables and you can tell it by just doing this. One thing I didn't talk about in the last tutorial is what program I'm using. This is the PyCharm community version, and I use this just for my demonstration point of views for my YouTube. It makes it really easy to be able to, like I just showed you, show you what things are associated to the objects in question. Okay, minimally, we create that. But in order to be able to, like I'm trying to do down here in line 30, to create this object, to post it to the FMC, I have to give it at least two values, a name, or two variables, I should say. I have to assign it a name, and I have to assign it a value. That's the terms that were used inside the FMC's API process. They want something called name and they want something called value, and then I'm going to use those values to post them to the FMC. Now, the name that I used here, I put 2 underscores in front of it just so it'll be easy to find. It'll be at the top of the list when we go look at the FMC to see whether they're created or not. And then 1.2.3.4, whatever, right? You don't have to put the /32 on there for a host object. You could just leave it 1.2.3.4, but I did it anyway. And that's it. So let's run this, and you can see I've got some commented out commands below that. But let's just run this right now as is. Oh, the other thing, let me clear. The other thing I have is I have a tail of the output log, so we can see what happens. Because you'll see when I run this, we're actually not going to see much, right? This will say exit code 0. As soon as it's done, and I do expect it to error. You'll see the error back here in a minute. Even though the program ran correctly, we have an error, and the reason we have an error is I wanted to specifically call this out because it's kind of a flaw or a quote-unquote bug of the logic of the FMC API, and I wanted you to see kind of how you have to handle it. You have to look in the log file, look for these error log messages, and you can see that we actually post the JSON response we're getting back from the FMC itself. In this case, invalid object name. Now, I intentionally did this because I wanted to show you that the name, where's my name? Oh, this got in the way. My name has a space in it. I know from experience that you can't have spaces in your network objects, your IP host, IP range, IP network class objects. Now in the example below this one, the one that's commented out, you'll see that we're still using _ test space name, and this one will work because I have a mechanism that when you assign a value this away, it will actually see whether or not the name is valid for the syntax that the API is looking for, and it will by default, it will inject wherever you have bad characters, it'll inject an underscore. So if I put an underscore in this one, when we come down here and try and get this information, the same information back out of the FMC, it'll inject this underscore. Maybe again a little complex, but I wanted to show you a little bit of how to troubleshoot some of the things that may or may not work. All right, so let's run this again. And this time it should assign the name and the value, and then we should be able to post that information. Running, and I'm going to flip over to here. You can see it's post success. So object with _ test _ name, and I always print out the object's ID so that you can see that and see in the log file what was created. Almost all the time, every API object is going to want the ID. So I figure I'd put it in the log file so you can easily access it if you want to use it for some other purpose. Now, what I want to show is I'm going to flip over here to the Firepower Management Center. I'm actually logged into the FMC, and I'm on the port tab because I wanted to have it refresh when I click on the network tab, and lo and behold, _ test _ name 1.2.3.4. Yay! All right, so now let's come back over here. Whoops, wrong one. Let's come back over here, and I'm going to comment out this first section. Essentially, I'm going to move down to my second instance of this. I could do this a little bit different. Actually, let's do it a little bit different. Sorry, indecision during recording. What I'm going to do is we're going to actually delete this object out of the FMC manually. I'm going to click on port just so it's out of the way. And now what's going to happen is we're going to create the instance using the instance1 variable. But then I want to pretend that either the instance1 variable never was used, you just wanted to get an object out of the FMC that you already know about. And in this case, we want the __ test space, notice, name. Okay, and we're going to do a get feature. So notice that the way these work is, sorry, alarm. Notice the way these work is that I reference the instance variable value name dot, and then I have get, post, delete, and put options. We'll see put down here in just a second. And in this case, notice that I've assigned the name value during the instantiation of the instance variable. Then I do a get, and the reason I do a get is that really what I'm trying to do is pull back out that value object, right? Okay, so let me run this and flip over to my output. We truncate the log file. We posted the object. Then this line right here, the second to the last one, adjusting name. Notice that I'm taking the __ test space name and I'm modifying it to __ test _ name due to containing invalid characters. So all I did was morph the space into an underscore. And then we get success. We found something with that name and it had this ID. Notice those IDs are the same. And then over here, because we did a print option, I said just print the value. We print it out to the Python output 1.2.3.4 to prove that we can actually get that information. Okay, lastly, now this time I am going to comment this out because I don't want to over mess with the instance variables. The last one I want to show is instantiation like a boss, as my 5-year-old would say. Notice we're creating a new instance object, instance 3. This equals IP host. We're instantiating it against the FMC that we have created. I'm giving it a name. Again, I have a space in here, but it doesn't really matter. In fact, I'll get out of the way. I don't know why that click icon stays there. In fact, let's do this. Let's add some really funky characters in there as well. Okay, so test2, blah, 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 name. Okay, and value 1.2.3.4. Now notice that I've given it through experience. I know that name and value is all that's required. So I can instantiate the object and then immediately post the object to the FMC. And then in a minute we're going to assign a new value and put it, but all I wanted to do is print the value here to prove to you that it's there. We'll also flip over to the FMC and see it over there. In the thing itself. Alright, so let's get a new one. Let's run this and flip over here. We'll see the print down here and we'll watch the log file up here. Notice the name was modified with a bunch of underscores. It was successfully created and we printed 1.2.3.4. Alright, so now if we come over to the FMC itself, we click on network, we should see the _ test name, which I'm just going to delete while I'm here. But we also see the _ test2 with all the crazy underscores, and it's there as well. So I want to delete that and flip back to my PyCharm instance. Now this time we're going to create that object again. Just I deleted it because the code doesn't. My code's not perfect. If you try and post and there's already something with that value, it doesn't like it. So you have to make sure that you clean up after yourself. More than likely you're not going to need to worry about that, but I'm just trying to be careful during the tutorial here. So we're going to go through and instantiate instance 3 again. We're going to post that value again. We're going to change the value of instance 3 to 2.3.4.5. Now this is only local to this Python instance variable until we make changes. So we're going to use the put method to essentially take this one instance 3 object, this Python variable that's an instance of the IP host FMC API class. We're going to put all those changes back onto the FMC. So we've already seen these first couple lines of code work and we saw that we get 1.2.3.4, but this time I'm going to put, and then again we'll just do the print out again just because it's there. So we're going to go here, we're going to come back and watch our log file, creating a token. It's being slow. We created the test name. We created it, we posted, we put it. Notice the IDs are the same, so it's the exact same object we're messing with, and you can see that at least the Python variable sees it as 2.3.4. Let's flip over to the firepower, the FMC, and refresh the network, and we should see 2.3.4.5, right? And that is how that works. Now I only have, in this tutorial, I've only shown the IP host, but this could very easily have been different. We could do, in fact, let's just do one. I'm going a little off script here. Let's just quickly try and throw one together for object one. I don't care, it's just less typing. Let's do one for security zones. So we can put a security zone, and remember what the first thing is you need. You always need to have, it doesn't have to be the first thing, but you always have to have an FMC. And again, I'm going to try and do this like a boss. We know that we're going to have a name. And I don't know, I just want to make sure I don't cover something that's already in there. Actually, let's flip over and we'll double check that. So that's under, I don't know why security zones are under interface, but that's where they're at. I have an in and an out. Okay, so ASDF ought to work just fine. And I think there's one more thing I need. I think it's the mode. Whoops, post. You can see why I had all this pre-typed. I'm a terrible typist. Okay, so we're running it. We're going to flip over here. We're going to watch the log file. Oh, why we're looking at the log file. The log file, notice it always gets file truncated. I've actually set it up that every single time you run this program, it deletes the output.log file and creates a new one, essentially. It overwrites it. That way your log file doesn't get really huge with a bunch of old stuff that probably doesn't matter anymore. It's only going to give you the pertinent information you need for the current running time you ran this. So if you want your output logs to maintain, you probably want to make copies of it and copy them somewhere else. I could probably add a value so you could make that change, but right now that doesn't exist. All right, so post success, object with name blah 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 has been assigned an ID. Now if we click over here and click on port and then click back on interface, we'll see that we have ASDF and interface type. For whatever reason they use the value mode is routed. Now, where do I get this information? How do I know value and mode? Well, if you go to the API Explorer for your FMC, and again, I have created yet another user. So I have admin, I have API Explorer, and API Script as users in my FMC because I want to be able to access all three locations like I'm doing right now, one using my Python script, one using the API Explorer, and one logged into the FMC's management GUI. I want to be able to get to all of it all at the same time. Now what are we looking for? Oh, under Object, let's find security zone. Of course, I'm going to select one that's way down. And the reason this screen is security zones right there. The reason this screen is kind of squatty is I wanted the ability to not have a lot of white space and make the resolution a lot better. So in this instance, I could click Get to get a list of all the security zones. And you can see name in, name out, type of security zone, and somewhere in here, there's our ASDF, and if I grab that UUID, God, I hate how that does that. If I grab that UUID, I call it UUID, sorry, it's an ID, and I put the object ID up here, and did another get, it's like getting on that particular object. I think we have to do an extended equals true to be able to get the mode. Nope, interface mode. That's right. I called it mode, but it's really interface mode is routed. Another thing you can do in the API Explorer is click examples, and it will show you, and obviously much better if you opened up your screen a lot better, you'd get more. You can see the same kind of information that I just did. So interface mode in this example is in line, and it's assigned to some interfaces, which we aren't doing yet. Okay, let's flip back over. I think we've covered everything I want to cover. Oh, did we run this yet? Yes, we did, because it was in there. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. Post any questions in the chat, or experiment and see what you can come up with. Thanks for your time.